Hey, incredible viewer. Which city and country are you enjoying this from? Maybe a quiet countryside or a dynamic, sprawling city? Type it in the comments below and please share this video around. It helps my channel more than you know. Let's go. I'm locked up now. The past 4 months have dragged on, each day slower than the last. Without my laptop to fill the hours, I've been forced to find new ways to occupy my mind. Most days, I sift through structural formulas and building codes I once used daily, playing them back like a mental symphony. Other times, I lie still on the cot, focusing on every noise, metallic clinks, footsteps, distant voices, trying to name each sound. It's become a sort of game to trick time into moving faster. I keep reminding myself that everything I did was to protect my daughter. I truly believe that. Yet, in the quietest moments, I wonder, was there more to it? Some buried instinct or impulse I haven't faced? I don't know anymore. But that's the version of events I'm holding on to, at least until I'm free. Morning, Mr. Harper. How are you today? Sarah Walsh, my attorney, greeted me as I entered the room where she waited beside a gleaming wooden table. After the guard uncuffed me, I offered a faint smile. Can't complain. Dropped another 2 pounds. I might actually reach my goal weight by Christmas. I added, I can crank out 100 military push-ups without stopping. But before she had a chance to reply, we were interrupted. All rise, the bailiff announced. We stood as the session began in Travis County Family Court. Judge Martinez entered, adjusted her glasses, and gave us a quick glance. Ms. Walsh, are you and your client ready to begin? Yes, Your Honor, Sarah replied confidently. And just like that, the next round was underway. Sarah, whom I've come to see as a warrior in designer heels, fired off a barrage of motions. Her voice was steady, her delivery relentless, like she didn't need to breathe. She argued that, since full custody of my daughter Ella had already been awarded to me, keeping me in jail was unjust, bordering on punitive. The judge didn't let her finish. Ms. Walsh, is your client willing to reveal his daughter's location and permit visitation with his ex-wife? Sarah hesitated, then continued. Your Honor, those are the only matters before the court today. Custody isn't being contested. However, Mr. Harper has denied the mother access to their daughter for over 7 months, in violation of standing orders. His release is conditional on disclosing Ella's whereabouts and arranging supervised visits, if the mother agrees. She looked to me. I gave a firm shake of my head. My client declines to provide that information at this time, she said evenly. In addition, we're requesting permission for him to resume use of his laptop to manage his company remotely. The judge didn't look disgusted. She looked furious, as if she couldn't believe I'd dare to defy her in court. Request denied, she said, clipped and cold. Mr. Matthew Harper will remain in custody until he discloses the location of Ella Harper. The gavel hit the block. Case closed. Before I was let out, Sarah leaned toward me and whispered, She's decided already. You know that, right? She's going to keep you here until you give in. I could tell she was exhausted by all this. Her frustration now matched the judge's. Do whatever it takes to get me out, I said. I don't care how, just get it done. Matthew, just tell them where she is. I can't, and you know why. Then go earn that insane retainer I'm paying, and make sure Raymond visits tomorrow with a company update. She stared at me a moment longer, like she wanted to push harder but couldn't bring herself to. Instead, she gave me a tired nod. I'm running out of moves, she murmured. You'll find a way, Sarah. You always do. We'll be together for Christmas. Same as always. The cuffs went back on. I was let out, back to the same cold, familiar cell I'd left that morning. This hearing had gone just like the 3 before it. Sarah wasn't wrong. Judge Martinez had made up her mind long ago. Her reputation was well-earned, stern, unbending, and immune to money or influence, and I had plenty of both. The following day, Raymond dropped by to brief me on how the business was holding up. I watched him closely, searching his face for even a flicker of a smile. "Come on, Raymond, just once. Give me a grin. I could really use one." I smirked faintly. "Matthew, explain this to me. How am I supposed to put on a happy face when everything's unraveling and you're holed up in here?" I gestured around the room. "Just hand over the answers they're looking for so we can focus on running your company again." He shot me a knowing glance. I gave him a slight nod. "I've already tried," he said. For the next hour, he filled me in on how things were running. I had full faith in him, equal to the trust I placed in myself. He'd never once let me down. The company was still making money, but the wave of negative publicity was jeopardizing a few key ventures. "Raymond," he muttered, "this whole thing is just a show. They're grandstanding for investors and reporters." And he had a point. They'll come crawling back. No one else in Austin can match what we bring to the table when it comes to design. They know it, he went on. But there are two firms that cross the line, and I intend to bleed them dry for dragging my reputation through the dirt. Every lie is going to cost them tenfold. Then he pivoted. "What's the status of our other initiative?" I was keenly aware that every word we exchanged was likely being recorded. "We're making progress," I replied, "but it's draining time and burning through capital." He locked eyes with me. "I don't care what it takes. Money, manpower, whatever. I want it done. Fast." "Got it," I said. "Yes, boss." "I figured you ought to be aware of the financial strain," he added. "I'm confident the company will still be standing tall when you're out," I said after a beat. "And don't worry, your loyalty won't go unnoticed." He leaned back. "Also, find a new set of lawyers for Sarah Walsh. The judge handling her case seems personally out for me." "You know pushing this might only make her angrier, right?" I asked. He shrugged. "Let her be angry. What's she going to do, throw me in prison?" He laughed bitterly. "And another thing, look into her background. There has to be something we can use." Time was nearly up. I rose from my seat. "Take care of the company," I said as I turned away. Back in my cell, I lay on my back that night and stared at the ceiling. I counted the cracks again. There was a new one. That made 21. "I should file a complaint about the conditions in here," I muttered before letting the thin mattress swallow me into restless sleep. Divorce, I reflected, was savage, mostly because I never thought it would come to that. Fortunately, my father had insisted on an airtight prenup. Without it, I'd be looking at complete ruin. My career in architecture was just beginning to gain momentum, and my feelings for Rebecca had completely clouded my judgment. At the time, signing such a document felt absurd. We were meant to last, but forever turned out to be just 8 years and some change. Luckily, she signed without hesitation. Maybe she believed in the same illusion I did. Clearly, that was a mistake. Like I said, I'm not just rich. I'm smart. Maybe a bit arrogant, too. Truthfully, I could have skipped school altogether, but my mother insisted I have a normal upbringing. That meant regular classrooms, even though I was almost always bored out of my mind. Eventually, she agreed to let me take college-level courses online, so long as they didn't interfere with my daily schedule. By the time I hit my senior year of high school, I already had a bachelor's in civil engineering. She also insisted I date, at least twice a month. Most of the girls I met couldn't keep up mentally. Their games felt juvenile, and I lost interest quickly. I wasn't built like an athlete, 5'10", 165 pounds, and it showed. Still, I didn't look like a nerd either. No thick glasses, no pocket protector. I flew under the radar just enough. Girls whispered when I passed. "He's got a sharp wit," they'd say. My parents weren't rich. I drove an old, beat-up family car. I probably looked like someone the prom queen might settle for on a bad day. "Mom, I really don't want to go tonight," I'd protest as she dropped me off at another school function. "Honey, just indulge me," she'd smile. talk to someone. Maybe even ask a girl to dance. You've got the brains, sure, she'd say. But life doesn't get taught in textbooks. You need to live it. Now go, have fun. Refusal wasn't an option. She was determined to make me socially functional, even if I kicked and screamed the whole way. Given the choice, I would have gladly disappeared into the background and stayed there. But that wasn't in the cards. Someone dubbed me the Brain, and the name stuck. Kids can be cruel like that. Graduating high school felt like being set free. I earned a full scholarship to the University of Texas at Austin, finally free to steer my own life. I majored in structural engineering, minoring in architecture and math. During my college years, I landed a research grant focused on earthquake-resistant foundation systems. That's when Rebecca entered the picture. She was training to be a CAD technician. She stood 5'4", with soft, wavy light brown hair, piercing blue eyes, and a figure that caught more than a few glances. There was a quiet brilliance about her, paired with a soft-spoken grace that set her apart. I spent hours immersed in work at the engineering lab, and somehow, almost like clockwork, she would appear to do her architectural drafting right when I was there. Now and then, she'd come across a tricky design flaw or a challenging 3D structure, and she'd turn to me with a few questions. I never minded. In fact, I looked forward to those moments. What started as brief exchanges gradually evolved into deeper talks, often shifting toward the things I was working on. Although Rebecca understood the broader strokes of my projects, the detailed math and structural analysis I did often left her puzzled. One evening, I asked her out for dinner. Over slices of pizza and a shared soda pitcher, my view of her began to shift. She became more than just another face from the lab. But she was upfront with me. School came first. She wasn't opposed to lighthearted dating, but a serious relationship wasn't on her radar. So we stayed friends, meeting up occasionally when she had the time. After I finished my undergraduate degree in structural engineering, picked up a secondary focus in architecture, and wrapped up a master's in business, my academic chapter came to a close. I had taken in all that I could from the university. It wasn't long before I started applying for independent research grants. With some financial backing, I managed to get a small engineering startup off the ground in a humble office. I borrowed money, and my parents even refinanced their house to help me buy necessary equipment. As I started working 14, 16-hour days, my mother quit her job to help me navigate the mountain of government forms and bureaucratic red tape. Her support freed me to pour all my attention into developing new ideas. My first major breakthrough, a novel approach to earthquake-resilient foundations, came just after my funding dried up, which meant the rights to the idea stayed entirely mine. 2 more innovations in eco-friendly construction materials followed, and after seeing the potential, my father resigned from his own job to become my business manager. Life got hectic, but it was meaningful. One lesson I never expected to learn stood out. When you're looking for talent, you don't always have to chase it. Just let people know you're building something worthwhile, and the right ones tend to find their way to you. I needed 2 exceptional hires. The company wasn't turning huge profits yet, but I had faith, especially with 4 patents nearly finalized, that the right team could change everything. I spoke with about 20 applicants who were convinced they were a good fit. But after our conversations, most of them walked away quieter than they'd come in. Then Katie arrived, referred by an old classmate. She was extremely shy, barely made eye contact, but her intelligence was crystal clear. "So Katie," I began, "tell me a little about yourself. What's home like?" She glanced up and told me she lived with her parents and younger brother. No boyfriend, which didn't surprise me. And she had just finished her degree, now looking to begin her career. Her academic achievements were excellent, and though I couldn't offer a big paycheck, I made the offer. "Katie, I can start you at $2,000 a month. It's a salaried role, no clocking in, and I won't be breathing down your neck. Just stay on top of your work and we'll grow, and so will your pay." She paused before asking, "Is there a dress code?" I felt my face warm as I replied, "Wear whatever you like. As long as you're getting the job done, that's what matters. Her cheeks turned red, but she smiled and accepted. One more position left to fill. That person turned out to be Raymond. He was working at a major construction firm, earning a solid salary, but promotions kept slipping through his fingers, not because of ability, but due to office politics. His frustration was obvious, and I could see he had real potential. But there was a big gap between what he was making and what I could pay. When he received an offer from another company, he brought the documents to our next meeting, placed them in front of me, and made it clear he was weighing his options seriously. I pushed the papers back toward him and said, "If I were you, I'd take this deal. It's a great offer. But if in 3 years we're successful and that number feels small, I hope you'll still feel good about your choice. If you come on board with me, I'll give you 1% of the company after a year, and another 1% each year, up to 5%. You can take the money now, or take a chance on building something that lasts. Up to you." He took 2 days to think about it. In the end, he chose to join us. With our team finally shaping up, things started accelerating quickly. We needed more hands, both for design work and on construction sites. One day, I walked to a food truck near the office to grab lunch for everyone, and I saw Rebecca a few people ahead in line. As she turned to leave with her order, she noticed me and stopped to say hi. Before long, we were seated together, catching up over lunch. She told me she was working at a small architectural studio not far from my office, about 2 miles away. The job wasn't paying much, but she was getting hands-on experience before negotiating for something better. "What kind of salary are you aiming for?" I asked. "I'm making $1,200 a month right now. No benefits," she said. "But I know I'm worth at least $2,000, and full health coverage," she added, holding my gaze steadily. I looked at her and asked, "Do you know how to read structural blueprints?" "Are you asking if I know how to read blueprints?" she asked, her brow slightly furrowed. "I'm not talking about just basic CAD usage," I clarified. "I mean really understanding structural plans, the kind you'd see on a job site." "Isn't that something anyone in our line of work should know?" she responded, still not sure where I was going with this. "Well, if you do, and if you're open to juggling both office responsibilities and fieldwork, I'd love to bring you onto the team." "Who exactly do you work for?" she asked. "I own my own engineering firm just off South Lamar," I replied. "I've already hired 2 team members and both my parents help out with the day-to-day. But we're growing fast. We could use someone else." I handed her my business card. "Take a little time to think it over. Swing by after your shift one day. I'll show you around. I'd stay and talk more, but I've got lunch waiting for the crew, and they're probably wondering what's taking me so long. Just give it some thought." "Rebecca, where have you been?" "I'm starving over here," Raymond grumbled as I passed him his sandwich. "Ran into someone I used to know and offered her a job," I said, as if it were nothing. "Oh? Should I be jealous?" he joked. "Just someone I dated briefly in college. It didn't go anywhere," I replied. "And what exactly would she be doing if she came on board?" he asked. "Raymond, you're an idiot," I said, chucking a Coke his way. "Hey, just trying to understand the situation." "No need to get defensive," he said, holding up his hands. The others laughed, though my mom didn't say a word. Rebecca stopped by that Thursday night after finishing her shift. She knocked, and when there was no answer, she tried the door. It was unlocked, so she stepped inside. "Hello? Anyone around?" she called as she entered. My dad and I were still working late, and I got up when I heard her voice. "Glad you came," I said, heading over. "Rebecca, this is my dad, Richard," I introduced them as he extended a hand. "We went to school together," I added. "So this is the one you said you might hire?" my dad asked, giving her a once-over. "Come on, let me show you what we're doing here." Over the next couple of hours, I walked her through the projects we were handling, the new contracts we'd secured, and plans for moving to a larger space. I told her how my dad had locked down funding to double our operation by the holidays. "I think you'd be a perfect addition to the team, Rebecca, and I can match the salary you mentioned." "You haven't even seen my resume," she said, raising an eyebrow. "Don't forget, we've worked together before." You were working. I was still figuring things out, she said with a small grin. Even then, I knew you had what it takes. You're smart, dependable, and open to learning. Exactly the qualities we need. In that case, I'm in, she said. I'll need to give a week's notice, but I can start right after. We shook on it while my dad looked on, silent as ever. See you bright and early on the 15th, I said. Dress however you like. We keep things casual. It's pretty much Friday every day around here. And don't worry about lunch. We've got that covered. Even dinner, if we go late. 10 minutes later, she was gone, and my dad and I went back to work. You've still got a thing for her, he said, not looking up. Come on, Dad. It's not like that. We just dated for a while, way back. Matthew, you're talking to me. I know you. We've got 6 demanding months ahead of us, and I need you sharp until we're fully settled in the new space. You worry too much. That's what dads are for, he said with a sigh. Once Rebecca started, she hit the ground running. She learned quickly and soon became a key player on the team. Everyone appreciated her, except my father. He never said anything negative, but he kept his distance. One night I asked my mom, why hasn't Dad warmed up to Rebecca? It's not that he doesn't like her, she said gently. He just thinks now isn't the right time for you to be emotionally involved. Seriously? He proposed to you after 3 dates and married you 2 weeks later. And I'm the one moving too fast? I said, making her laugh. You know how he is. He's always thinking 5 steps ahead when it comes to you, but I'll talk to him. Later, Rebecca asked, Matthew, are we actually dating? If we're not, I have no idea what the last 7 hours were, she said with a shy smile. You're not imagining things, I said, leaning back against the headboard and sipping from a glass of wine on the nightstand. I just needed to know we're on the same page, she said softly. That's all. So this is your way of making sure I don't treat you like a convenient escape? I said with a smirk, reaching out to pull her closer. She responded with a laugh and a soft whack from a nearby pillow. Must I spell this out for you? She asked, her voice edged with sincerity. I'm falling for you, and I know you feel something too. I'm just unsure how deep it runs. The words hung in the air, clear, undeniable. She finished her wine in one gulp and looked at me, visibly uneasy. I tried to ease the tension. So, should I cancel my rotating lineup of romantic dinners? I joked, half smiling. She didn't crack a smile. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a game for her. Look, I said gently, you matter to me. Maybe it is love. I'm leaning that way. I just need a bit of space to be absolutely sure. Would you be okay giving me that? She let out a breath. Once we're settled in the new place, maybe we'll both have a chance to really figure it out. But Matthew, I've thought through every possibility, except one, and that last one isn't on the table right now. I just needed to know you're not playing with my emotions. I took her face in my hands and said, Rebecca, I don't lie, and I don't play with the hearts of people I care about. I kissed her, and that seemed to ease her tension. Well, I said after a beat, now that we've cleared the air, are you going to tell me about that mysterious opportunity you've been keeping to yourself? We slipped back into our usual push-pull, emotional sparring mixed with physical teasing, each of us seeing how far we could go before the other caved. That night, I won. Afterward, we made it official. Everyone knew we were a couple, even my father, who, to my surprise, took it rather well. The following months were intense. Between the relocation and the demands of work, we rarely had downtime. But by December 15th, we were moved into the new office. A week later, we were fully up and running, just in time for the holiday rush. We shut everything down between Christmas and New Year's, giving the whole team some rest. Christmas Eve, we spent with her side of the family, Christmas Day with mine. By the end of it, we were completely wiped out. I'm serious about this, she said, her tone unwavering. So am I replied, pulling her onto my lap. She met my gaze. Matthew, I want us to get a place together. That made me pause. I looked into her eyes, trying to read the depth behind them. "I mean it," she said. "We're not kids. You're 27, I'm 23. It makes sense now. The money we've blown on hotel rooms, we could have been paying rent." Her voice softened. "That is, if you want to." Truth was, I'd already been thinking the same thing. With everything moving forward in our lives, cohabitating felt like the natural next step. "I'd really like that," I said. "So, when do we start the hunt?" She blinked, stunned by how easily I agreed. But when it registered, her whole face lit up. "Oh my God, this is going to be amazing. Our own space. We can literally walk around naked if we want to." She bounced excitedly on the bed, then stopped suddenly, her expression turning more serious. "Wait, how do you think your parents will take it? Especially your dad?" It took a few weeks of searching, but we finally found the right spot and moved in. My parents had their questions, mainly about where I saw things going. I kept it honest. "I want to know Rebecca on a deeper level." "You already seem to know her quite well," my mom said, smiling knowingly. As for my dad, he didn't say much, but I could tell he understood that I was out of his hands now. Things were good. Over the next couple of years, my company expanded rapidly. We upgraded offices again, this time to a much larger location. That holiday season, I proposed. Rebecca said yes. My father insisted on a prenup. I pushed back, but Rebecca agreed without hesitation. I softened the terms, and eventually, everyone walked away content. 3 months later, we learned Rebecca was pregnant. Her mom couldn't have been happier. When Ella arrived, Rebecca decided to step away from her career to focus on raising her. Ella was stunning. Her mother's features reflected back at us. Same soft chestnut hair, same electric blue eyes, even the tiny birthmark near her ankle. Rebecca and my mother grew incredibly close. Meanwhile, my father and I continued to build the business. The next 5 years were the most fulfilling of our lives. The company quadrupled in size. We grew from a lean team of 4 to nearly 30. Though I was still working long hours, Rebecca made one thing non-negotiable. I had to be home for dinner at least 3 nights a week. We bought a beautiful home in Westlake, larger than we needed, but it felt right. With more time on her hands, Rebecca became heavily involved in community work, focusing her energy on the Austin Education Foundation. "No more charity events this weekend," I moaned one Friday evening. I was hoping the 3 of us could just sneak away for a change. I wrapped my arms around her from behind and kissed the curve of her neck. "If you cancel," I murmured, "I promise you won't regret it." "I'm pleading with you," I said, my voice heavy with sincerity. "This auction is incredibly important to me, and it's all going toward charity," she countered gently, brushing her lips against mine. "These kids may not be able to escape their lives for a weekend, but with enough donations, we can at least give them a fighting chance through better education." Her motives were beyond reproach, and though I wasn't exactly thrilled, I couldn't dispute her reasoning. It was solid. So when Saturday night rolled around, we showed up. If I was going to be pulled into this, I figured I might as well bring my parents too. They didn't push back, though Dad grunted something about how not even divine intervention could get him to dance, no matter how much Mom pleaded. The evening began smoothly, until I came face to face with Daniel and his wife, Claire. Daniel had been partnering with Rebecca in planning the whole thing. I already knew the essentials. He ran a flourishing construction supply firm just outside town. His largest clients were state-funded projects, and with recent government infrastructure booms, business was thriving. "Matthew, I'd like you to meet Daniel and Claire Carter," Rebecca said, gesturing between us. "Daniel's been a huge help with the auction donations," she added warmly. "It wasn't anything major," Daniel said with a modest shrug. "I just persuaded a few partners to double their pledges and managed to round up the rest through calls and favors." "Don't downplay it," Rebecca said, beaming. "Because of you, we'll be putting up classrooms for more than 100 kids this summer. That's something to be proud of." "It's all thanks to Claire," he replied, glancing toward her. She kept the company afloat while I was out pitching and raising funds. Honestly, I couldn't have pulled it off without her. He gave her a proud smile. She returned one, tight, controlled, and clearly forced. The kind of smile you wear when you're simmering underneath. "Daniel, I think I spotted some folks you might want to chat with," Claire said, steering him away. "Maybe you can convince them to up their donations." The main thing I knew about Daniel was that he was rich, and intent on making sure no one ever forgot it. Egotistical and self-important summed him up pretty well. But Claire was a different story. Born into money and sharp as a blade, she was a seasoned negotiator and not someone to underestimate. She was more than capable of managing operations while Daniel played socialite. But from the look on her face, she didn't seem thrilled with the arrangement. I remember thinking, of all the people to run into tonight, it had to be them. Dinner was great though, exactly what you'd expect, while the speeches dragged on for what felt like forever. One by one, names were celebrated, Daniel and Rebecca especially. After dessert, the band started up. My father winced, but Mom eventually managed to pull him onto the floor. I took Rebecca's hand, held her close, and let myself enjoy the evening. I wasn't worried when Daniel asked her for a dance. There was nothing overtly inappropriate, but something about the way he held her, the easy laughter they shared as they swayed, left a sour feeling churning in my stomach. That was the first and last dance he had with my wife that evening. When the auction began, energy ran high. People enthusiastically bid on all kinds of items, some going for double what they were worth, everyone eager to support the cause. But when the more expensive packages came up, the room grew a bit more restrained. The economic climate was on everyone's mind. I snagged a couple of mid-range items and figured I'd done my part, until Rebecca leaned in and murmured, "Can you go after that Hill Country weekend getaway?" How could I say no? The bidding escalated quickly. Daniel seemed unusually eager to win it. I made my final offer, but he topped it by $1,000 just like that. The room went quiet. No one else jumped in. The prize was his. When he stepped up to collect the certificate, he announced it was a birthday surprise for Claire. The room applauded. How touching, how romantic. But Claire didn't react. She sat there, sipping her wine, detached. I couldn't shake the feeling that something in their seemingly flawless marriage was starting to splinter. "We should have gotten that trip," Rebecca said, her voice tinged with disappointment. "Sweetheart," I told her, "for what he spent, we could go for an entire week, not just a long weekend." "But Matthew," she said, her tone wistful, "he did it for her. It was romantic." "All right, fine. I'll bring you flowers next week. That work?" She gave me a look, a subtle one, that said it didn't. That moment was the tipping point, the first tremor of everything that followed. There's a saying about cockroaches, that they can squeeze through cracks as narrow as 1/64th of an inch. Daniel was just like that, slipping into spaces he had no business being in. I only wish I'd crushed him before he ever had the chance. Time passed. I buried myself in blueprints and deadlines. Rebecca threw herself deeper into her philanthropic work. On the outside, everything looked picture perfect, like the three of us were part of one big harmonious charade. That illusion held until May 21st. It was late. I was still poring over construction drafts when I glanced at the clock. 7 o'clock. Quitting time. I shut down the lights and walked toward my mother's office. There she was, her head slumped over her desk. I chuckled. You know I don't pay my employees to nap at work, even the ones who gave birth to me. I let out a sharp laugh, but she didn't even flinch. "Mom, come on, wake up," I urged, my voice rising with panic. "Dad's going to lose it if I don't get you out of here." I moved in closer and laid my hand on her shoulder. Her skin was freezing, eerily still. When the paramedics arrived, it was already over. They did everything they could, but there was no bringing her back. They suspected a heart attack but wouldn't confirm anything until the autopsy. The following day dragged on like a dream I couldn't wake from. Everything sounded muffled, like I was submerged beneath the surface of life. I'm sure people cried, that they said comforting things, offered hugs, but none of it got through. She was my mother, the steady center of my chaotic world. "Matthew, sweetheart, is there anything I can do?" My wife kept asking, but unless she could turn back time, there was nothing that could help. My daughter wept against my chest. I held her tightly, and when her tears finally eased, mine came rushing in like a flood. The crying didn't stop. Something deep within me cracked open that day, and I wouldn't grasp the full weight of it for months. Dad and I had the unwavering support of Raymond and his team. Apparently, Dad had known about Mom's health all along, but they'd decided not to tell me. Everything had already been arranged, so there was nothing left to organize. I couldn't eat, couldn't drink, and had to consciously remind myself to breathe. The funeral is a blur in my memory, just scattered images, nothing complete. I know I stood there, but mentally, I wasn't present. A lot of people came to honor her. Someone said there was a touching tribute in the local paper, but I never read it. She had gone, and this time, I wasn't allowed to follow. As a kid, Dad laid down the law, but Mom was the one who made life soft. She was the warmth in our home, the one who listened, the one who believed in me. She made me feel capable of anything. When Ella was born, we became even closer, something I hadn't thought possible. Losing her left a gaping wound. I felt empty, like some vital part of me had died too. Eventually, Dad and Rebecca stepped in and pushed me toward therapy. With some help and medication, I began the long climb out of the dark. Nearly 5 months passed before I could even pretend to function. I returned to the office, acted like myself, and to the untrained eye, I looked fine. But behind the closed door of my office, the truth was different. For Rebecca and Ella, I must have been a shadow of myself. They tried to reach me over and over, but I was emotionally locked away. Rebecca and I still shared a bed, and technically, our intimacy remained, but something was missing, and I knew she often felt let down. As clarity slowly returned, I noticed small details I'd missed, like the fact that Rebecca no longer wore glasses. She'd gotten laser surgery while I was still in a fog. Life had marched on, whether I'd joined it or not. I eventually called Raymond just to thank him for standing by us. He asked if I needed anything else, but I told him he'd already done more than enough. Dad had thrown himself into work again barely a week after the funeral. Raymond practically had to drag him out of the office some days. The company stayed solid under their care, while I tried to adapt to a world without my mother in it. Then, around the 6-month mark, I noticed something off. "There's a charity function tonight," Rebecca said, slipping into a sleek dress. "I'll be home by midnight." "Should I come with you?" I offered. "Unless you think a zombie makes a decent date, probably not," she replied, reaching for her earrings. "Want me to at least drive you?" "No, Daniel's picking me up," she said, barely glancing in my direction. I looked at her, said nothing, but everything was in my eyes. "What's that look for?" she snapped. "It's a fundraiser, not a date." I didn't answer. Instead, I walked over to the kitchen counter, picked up the prescription bottles, opened them, and dumped the pills into the toilet. "Matthew, what the hell are you doing?" she cried, rushing after me. "What I should have done months ago," I said. "Now give me 20 minutes. Call Daniel and tell him you've got a date, your husband." Something in my tone must have struck her, because she didn't argue. The venue was packed. People still offered condolences. I nodded politely, thanked them, and steered conversations away as quickly as I could. And then I saw him. My blood boiled with a quiet fury. "Matthew, looking good. How are you holding up?" Daniel said. "Never better," I answered with a smile that dared him to keep going. He paused, read the room, muttered something, and disappeared. "Was that really necessary?" Rebecca whispered beside me. "I don't owe him any favors," I said without emotion. Later that night, as the room came alive with music, I leaned toward Rebecca and asked her for a dance. "Think you're up for it?" she joked. "I'm not in a coffin yet," I said, grinning. We danced for a solid half hour, bodies in rhythm, and for a while, it felt like nothing had changed between us. Then, the mood shifted. "Mind if I borrow your lovely wife for a spin on the floor, old-timer?" Daniel asked, already reaching out to her. "No." His surprise was obvious. He clearly hadn't expected to hear that. Rebecca looked just as thrown. "Matthew, it's only a dance," she said, her voice gentle but urging. "What part of no is hard to grasp?" I shot back. "Let me simplify it for you. No, you're not dancing with my wife. Not now, not ever. Clear?" I stared him down. "Or do I need to spell it out for you on paper?" I added, calm but firm. "No problem," he muttered, stepping back. "That was a bit much," Rebecca said, her tone cool with disappointment. "Would you have rather danced with him than with me?" I asked, watching her closely. "Of course not. Why would you even ask that?" "Because when I shut him down, the look you gave me, it was like I'd crossed an unforgivable line. That look's been stuck in my head since." That night, we didn't make love. She said she had a headache. When she woke the next morning, I was already gone, first one at the office. "Morning, boss," Raymond said as he came in with his briefcase. He dropped it by his desk and started the coffee. "You're looking sharp. Everything good?" "I feel like ripping the tail off a rabid dog, so don't test me," I muttered, all edge and no warmth. "Well then," he said with a smirk, "looks like the old Matthew's finally back. Maybe we'll get something done now." I didn't return home for the next 2 nights. I slept on the office couch, used the shower in the executive suite, and thanks to a full closet, all I needed was takeout. My cell? Switched off. Office line? Cut. No one was allowed to disturb me under any circumstances. I went through every detail of our project files, dissecting the work line by line. What I found was a mess, critical oversights, sloppy planning. I called an emergency meeting. "Listen closely," I said, addressing the team. "If you want to see a paycheck on Monday, I expect your full attention today. Otherwise, I'll find people who actually give a damn. This is your one and only warning." A few heads nodded. Some looked anxious. A couple didn't hide their irritation. But the message landed. Just before closing time, Rebecca arrived. Raymond caught her at the door. "Whatever happened between you two," he said. "If I were you, I'd turn around." "He doesn't intimidate me," she snapped. "Suit yourself," he muttered, walking away. She came in, but I didn't glance up. I felt her presence, no need to confirm it with a look. I wasn't giving her the satisfaction of a scene. "Matthew?" she said softly. Then louder. "Matthew!" I finally looked at her. My eyes did the talking. "Are you coming back for dinner?" she asked. "Good question. But first tell me, what do you mean by home?" "What?" she said, clearly confused. "It's just a simple question." "Then answer it. Define home for me. What does it mean, and why should I return to it?" She sighed and rolled her eyes. "Fine. Home is where we live, where you eat, sleep, and belong." Exactly. It was my safe space. A place I found peace, the spot where I played with our daughter, where I could let my guard down, where I made love to my wife. I paused, then continued. "So tell me, why would I go back to a place that now feels like it doesn't want me?" "Matthew, you've been absent for months. When your mother died, you disappeared. I waited for you. I kept hoping you'd return. But it felt like you left with her." She faltered, her voice trembling. "I know it hurt. I know it crushed you. But we suffered too, watching you fade away in every sense. I reached for you in bed night after night, hoping you'd hold me. I wanted to help, to comfort you, to pull you out of the darkness." Her eyes welled up. "I tried, God knows I tried, but you wouldn't let me in, and all I could do was wait. Wait for the man I married to find his way back. or wait for the day I'd learn he never would. In the end, it was always going to boil down to one of two choices. So, when did things start between you and Daniel? We're not together, I replied. He's just someone I trust. Someone I can really open up to. Someone who listened when you weren't there. So, what? Friends with benefits? I haven't been with anyone since the last time you and I were, she said, her voice low. But I can't keep pressing pause on my life. If you're not willing to fix this, then I need out. She wasn't just raising her voice now. Tears streamed down her cheeks as the words broke out of her. Okay, I said slowly. But before I respond, I want you to promise me one thing. Just one. Anything, she said. Think hard before you agree. This won't be easy. I said anything, and I meant it. All right. Then I need you to completely cut Daniel out. No calls, no messages, no goodbyes. Nothing. She stared at me in disbelief. You can't be serious. That's insane. I'm not competing in my own marriage. This isn't a bluff. It's me or him. You decide, Rebecca. And so there's no pressure. Take the day. Tonight, before I come home, make your decision. I hesitated, then added, before I walk through that door, you either call him and end it for good, or you go to him. What happens after that is between you, him, and his wife. She looked at me, murmured something too quiet to hear, and stormed out, the door slamming behind her. Now all that was left was the waiting. In just a few hours, I'd know whether or not my marriage had survived. I sank into a chair, unmoving. I didn't read, didn't think, didn't even check the time. The silence swallowed me. The drive back that night felt unnaturally fast. When I pulled into the driveway and saw the lights off, I had my answer. Heavy with dread, I walked to the door, not sure whether I'd find a note or nothing at all. I stepped inside, dropped my laptop on the couch, and felt the dull ache of something slipping away. It reminded me of when Mom died. That same hollow, consuming void. Not again, I whispered to myself. I can't do this again. The house felt colder than ever. As I climbed the stairs and walked the hallway to our bedroom, I braced for the sight of empty drawers and cleared shelves. When I saw the driveway empty, I assumed you'd gone, I said quietly, brushing her cheek with my fingers. I wasn't sure I even had the courage to come inside. I love you. I'm sorry. She stopped my words with a kiss. I've got my husband back, she whispered. That's what matters. The next day, I didn't go into work. Thankfully, Ella had spent the night at her grandparents'. For the first time in ages, everything felt whole again. The morning after, I made breakfast with a light heart and then went to my office to sit by the window. I didn't open my laptop. I just watched the day unfold outside. This is it, I thought. I got my life back. After Mom passed, Dad buried himself in the office, chasing deadlines and distractions. Eventually, I stepped in and sent him off on a 2-week cruise. When he came back, he was changed, lighter, more alive, like someone who'd remembered how to smile. I suspect he met someone. When he cut back to part-time, I was anxious. When he retired fully 3 months later, I was proud. He still offered advice when I needed it, but the company was mine now, and I was ready. I worked hard, but I tried not to lose balance. Everything was steady until just before our 8th anniversary, when an accident at work shook things up. A new employee got hurt, nothing major, but it triggered a full OSHA audit. They turned the whole operation inside out. I felt like I'd been cross-examined by a health inspector in a lab coat. In the middle of all the stress, I forgot our anniversary completely. By the time I remembered, it was far too late. Rebecca had planned a romantic getaway, just the two of us. But I couldn't leave with OSHA breathing down my neck. You love that business more than you love me, she shouted. How am I supposed to compete with that? As soon as the inspection's over, we can go anywhere you want, I told her, desperate to make it right. But she wasn't interested in plans anymore. From the outside, we still looked like a picture-perfect couple. but I could feel the cracks forming. Something in us had shifted, and I couldn't name it. Rebecca had once been deeply involved with the Austin Education Foundation, but over the last couple of years, she'd stepped back. After the accident, though, she threw herself back into it. Maybe it was her way of coping. I didn't press. We'd talked about giving Ella a sibling, but lately, she'd grown more hesitant. "We're not getting any younger," I reminded her. "If we're going to do this, we need to start planning." "I'm not sure I want to go through all that again," she said. "Ella's at such an easy stage, and I like the freedom we have now. Let's wait a few more months." "All right," I said. "If it's just the three of us, that's still more than enough for me." 3 months later, she made it clear. Our family would stay just as it was. And truthfully, I was okay with that. There was a time when I truly believed everything had fallen perfectly into place. So how that leech managed to re-enter our lives remains a mystery to me. But he did. Somehow, inevitably. When Daniel and his wife parted ways, she ended up with nearly half of the business. He'd been hoping she'd opt for shares, but she demanded her cut in cash. To meet the payout, he took on a mountain of debt. Their son stayed under Daniel's roof, while their daughter moved in with Claire. People murmured that Daniel had cheated, though honestly, it was irrelevant. No prenup, no legal skirmish, just a clean break and an even split. He definitely got the raw end of that deal. We crossed paths again at some formal dinner. Rebecca gave me that subtle glance. "Matthew's bound to see him eventually," she muttered as Daniel neared. "Good evening, both of you." "It's been a while," Daniel said with a familiar ease. For Rebecca's sake, I faked a cordial smile and reached out to shake his hand. "Evening, Daniel," I replied with forced politeness. "You're looking great," he said. "Sorry to hear about your divorce from Mrs. Carter," I added, managing to sound sincere, though inside, I was smug. "These things happen," he shrugged. "Life doesn't always play fair. Heard there was an incident on one of your projects. Everyone okay?" "Just a rookie messing up," I said. "Took ages to convince OSHA we had it under control, but they slapped a fine on me anyway. Like you said, life moves forward." "I should make the rounds," he said, scanning the crowd. "Looks like there are a few new faces in the room, potential contributors. Be well. Hope we cross paths again." He smiled and walked off. Over my dead body, I thought. "See?" Rebecca whispered. "That wasn't so awful. We're all adults here, for the kids' sake." She had a point, when it came to the children at least. As for Daniel, I didn't and never would trust that manipulative fraud. And like some twisted fate, we kept running into him. What puzzled me most was the lack of a new woman at his side. He still had the charm, the money. He could have had his pick. It didn't upset me, just something I took note of. I lowered my guard, and with each passing encounter, I started to notice that Rebecca's once firm promise began to feel more like a relic from another time. But for me, it wasn't forgotten. That subtle fracture between us only widened. I had no clue about the quiet lunches or the joint meetings with donors until a fellow executive from Austin casually mentioned it. "They made a good pitch," he said. "Your wife is incredibly persuasive. You should bring her back into the business." He laughed lightly. "Truth is, I probably would have donated anyway, but not that much. The guy with her? I wouldn't trust him with my lunch order, but your wife? She could sell me anything." I said nothing. For nearly 8 weeks, I waited for her to bring it up herself. I left little clues, hoping she'd admit it. Eventually, I broke. She told me she was heading off for a 2-day fundraiser. "Going solo?" I asked. "Or will Daniel be joining you?" Her face dropped, like I'd knocked the wind out of her. She didn't deny it, just hesitated. "He'll be there," she finally said. "With Gary. You know we've been working on this project together." She took a sip of water, bracing for my response. "We had an agreement." "That was back when you got jealous of every man I worked with," she said. "We've moved past that, haven't we? The trip's set. Might even stretch to 3 days with the route we planned. We need the funding before summer if we want to help those kids transfer, she added. You gave me your word, Rebecca. Matthew, grow up. This isn't about him. It's about the kids. I'm not treating you like a child, Rebecca, but I'm warning you, you don't know what you're getting into. All I know is, some days I barely recognize the man standing in front of me. And that was the final note of the evening. Did we share a bed before she left? What do you think? The emotional distance between us had stretched thin. Only a sliver remained. We tiptoed around the real problems, especially after she moved out. That became our rhythm for months. Did we end up sleeping together again? We did. But it was different. Something fragile had broken. Neither of us seemed willing to risk emotional exposure. I suggested we sit down and really talk, but she only met me with a weary silence. That tiny space between us kept growing. I made a few efforts to close the gap, but deep down I knew we were on a collision course. I'm flying out Tuesday for work. Should be back by Wednesday night, she said. Just need to finalize deals with 3 clients. I answered. No. She furrowed her brow. No what? If that trip involves Daniel, then the answer is no. You're not going. Matthew, we've been through this already. I explained everything, and you agreed to move on. You even promised you wouldn't bring him up again. So that promise meant nothing? Her voice was sharp, her eyes blazing. I'm still going, she said firmly. And let me remind you, choose your next words wisely. You might not like what follows. I'm going, and there's nothing you can do about it. Then she walked away, leaving me standing there. She went on the trip. I stayed behind. While she was gone, I completely overhauled the bedroom. When she came home, her eyes scanned the room. Where are my things? They're in the other room, I said. What other room? The guest room. It's yours now. Her expression darkened instantly. Unbelievable, she muttered before stomping upstairs. Since that moment, everything's unraveled. Now, she parades her business trips like trophies, practically daring me to confront her. I didn't bite. When she stopped including me in the charity galas we once enjoyed together, I burned with resentment, but said nothing. When he had the audacity to show up at our home, I made sure she didn't leave with him. Before he drove off, I shattered his windshield with a sledgehammer. The situation was deteriorating fast, so I hired a private investigator. One Saturday night, well past midnight, I waited alone in the dark with a drink in hand. I'd gone over my speech in my head countless times, but the second she walked in, every word disappeared. Rebecca? Matthew? Is that you? We need to talk, I said. Can this wait until morning? I'm wiped out. No, we're doing this now. You choose. She sighed heavily. Fine. You're clearly not going to let it go. Say what you need to say. Her voice was cold, arms folded defensively. Is this how it ends? I asked. What are you even talking about? She replied. Our marriage, I said, barely audible. What is it that you want from me? I wanted the woman I married back, but I knew that ship had sailed. The truth was undeniable now. We hadn't been a real couple in ages. She'd moved on, and she didn't even try to deny it. She just stood there, wordless. I didn't give her room to spin a lie. There are pictures from your last event with Daniel on the table, I said. I expected him to look like some Hollywood leading man. Honestly, I'm underwhelmed. Her face reddened with emotion. Here's how this is going to go, I continued. Tomorrow, you'll be served divorce papers. You'll have 48 hours to move out. A restraining order will follow. Stay at least 100 feet from this house and any of my other properties. You'll be allowed to see Ella whenever you want, but only here. It's clear now. Daniel meant more to you than we ever did. And finally, she broke. Tears began rolling down her cheeks. I'm sorry. I don't even know how it got this far. It's like everything just spiraled. Rebecca, infidelity doesn't just happen. You don't accidentally wind up in someone else's bed. He said what you wanted to hear, fueled your resentment when I refused to meet with him. You bought every word. Maybe I'm not the fool after all. You can't keep Ella from me, she cried. I already have, I said. Hire a good attorney. You're going to need one. Alongside the finalized divorce papers, I included a copy of our prenuptial agreement. I had no doubt that once she and her lawyer reviewed it, they'd find it illuminating. With that, I turned and walked away, for good. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but there wasn't a viable alternative. Even though Daniel had footed the bill for Rebecca's legal representation, it wasn't enough to tilt the outcome in her favor. Each day I sat in that courtroom, I found myself silently thanking my father. Despite all the legal maneuvering, the prenup held strong. My attorneys successfully secured sole custody of Ella, citing my financial stability as a critical factor. Rebecca, by contrast, would have needed to re-enter the workforce just to scrape by. She received a one-time payment of $5,000, enough to clear the debt on her BMW. She retained her clothes, jewelry, and other personal effects, but anything that once belonged to my mother was returned to me. We settled on a fair visitation schedule, 2 days during the week and alternating weekends. I assumed she'd end up living with Daniel sooner rather than later. Her own family had all but disowned her. Still, I chose not to let it affect me, for Ella's well-being. The entire divorce was finalized in under 3 months, and just like that, I was free of both of them. When I saw them in passing, at social events, or just out in town, Daniel always wore that smug, self-satisfied smirk, while Rebecca couldn't meet my eyes. I did everything I could to maintain my composure. And for a while I succeeded, until something shifted. Dad, I don't want to sleep at Mom's anymore, Ella said to me one Friday night. Daniel Jr. scares me. Sweetheart, go upstairs for now. I'll talk to your mother when she gets here. You're staying home tonight. But Dad, I don't want her to be mad at you because of me. I knelt beside her and gently took her hand. Ella, nothing matters more to me than your safety. Let me worry about your mom, all right? I love you. Now go get cozy. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. When Rebecca arrived and I explained why Ella wasn't going back with her, she lost control. Matthew, Daniel Jr. is just high energy. He's not a threat. Ella's clearly exaggerating to turn you against me. You're seriously putting Daniel's son before your own daughter? You were naive to trust him before. Now you're being reckless. You're putting Ella in danger. I'm not keeping you from her, I said calmly. You can still visit, but there won't be any more overnight stays. You can't make that decision, she shouted. The court granted me those rights. I think it's best if you go now, Rebecca. I closed the door behind her and immediately picked up the phone. I called my attorney and asked her to prepare for what was coming. I knew Daniel wouldn't take this quietly. His pride wouldn't allow it. I expected retaliation, and he delivered. But without concrete proof to support my decision, the court ruled against me. I resisted for as long as I could, stalling the process through every legal means available. But I knew the delay wouldn't last forever. This time, I needed more than legal advice. I needed my father to step in. It was a massive ask, but I had run out of options. Dad, I said, I need you to take Ella out of the country, tomorrow. If I lose this case, Rebecca gets overnight custody again. I can't let that happen. I won't risk Ella's safety. I gave him her passport, birth certificate, and 5 envelopes, each stuffed with $100,000 in cash. This should be enough to get by. Don't tell me where you're going. Just pick somewhere far and hard to trace. No contact for 6 months. If you don't hear from me after that, wait another 6. He looked at me carefully, then said, There's someone I've been seeing. Would you mind if she came with us? I smiled. Of course not. Take whoever you want. Just make sure you're ready by morning. That Thursday, I kissed my daughter goodbye. I didn't know when I'd see her next, only that it wouldn't be soon. She cried, apologizing through her tears, but I told her she had nothing to be sorry for. I held her tightly one last time and watched her walk away with only a pink backpack and her favorite stuffed bunny. I didn't sleep at all that night. The following morning, I stood before a judge once again. "Mr. Harper," the judge said sternly, "this court orders you to immediately restore your ex-wife's visitation rights. You must turn Ella over to her mother today or face charges of contempt. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Honor," I replied, keeping my expression unreadable. After the hearing, I met with Raymond. "Things are going to move quickly now," I told him. "You'll need to take over day-to-day operations. I've transferred power of attorney. You're authorized to act on my behalf for anything urgent. I don't know how long I'll be out of the picture," I added, "but I trust you'll keep things running." Then I returned home, poured myself a strong drink, and sat in the silence. My phone rang non-stop. I didn't answer. I already knew who was calling. When Rebecca finally showed up, with a police officer at her side, I opened the door, let them in, and walked back to my drink without saying a word. "Matthew, where is she?" "Who are you referring to?" I asked, feigning ignorance and staying in character. "Don't play stupid. Where's Ella?" "She's not in her room," I said, keeping my tone light. "Then I'm guessing she's out with one of her dozens of friends. You know how sociable she is." "You promised to bring her to me this morning," she snapped. "If you don't comply, this officer is going to place you under arrest." She stood there, completely assured of her authority. "You really don't get it, do you?" I said evenly. "You actually think I'd let Ella be exposed to danger for your sake or anyone else's? You don't know me at all." I smiled with purpose, knowing it would set her off, and it did. Her face stiffened with rage. They cuffed me and hauled me to the police station. I spent the night in a cell, and the next morning I was standing in front of Judge Martinez. "Mr. Harper," the judge said sternly, "we need you to tell us your daughter's whereabouts." "I don't actually know where Ella is at this exact moment, Your Honor," I answered honestly. "Then maybe a stint in jail will help refresh your memory," the judge replied. "Matthew Harper, I'm holding you in contempt of court. You'll remain in custody until you reveal your daughter's location and stop interfering with Rebecca Harper's court-approved visitation rights." And that's how it all started. 4 months dragged by before Rebecca requested to see me. I turned her down at first, but eventually, curiosity got the better of me. "You look thinner," she commented as we sat facing each other across the bland wooden visitation table. "Just shedding a decade of emotional weight," I replied with a shrug. "Matthew, I never wanted it to come to this. I only want to see Ella," she said softly. "She told you what was happening. I gave you warnings, but you didn't pay attention," I said, my voice cold. "Now we've both lost the only thing that truly mattered." I submitted a petition to revise the visitation agreement. "Didn't they inform you?" "I heard," I said flatly, "but I don't trust you anymore. You've gotten too comfortable twisting the truth. Remember?" "That's behind us, Matthew. We need to move forward. The divorce is final." "Wasn't my choice," I said. "Does that really matter now?" she asked. "It does to me. I stayed loyal to you every single day we were together," I said sharply. "Can you honestly say the same?" "It happened just one time," she said under her breath. "You have to believe me." "One time?" "That one time was right after we had that massive argument. And your idea of coping was spending 2 nights in Daniel's bed? I regret it more than you can imagine. If I told you I was drunk and barely remembered it, would that change anything? I saw the revolting pictures your boyfriend sent me. Even if your memory was fuzzy, the evidence sure wasn't. You can say you're sorry 1,000,000 times, Rebecca. It won't undo what you shattered. My only concern now is Ella. I don't want Daniel's kid anywhere near her. Maybe you don't get it, but I do. And I don't believe a word that leaves your mouth," I replied. "I gave you the opportunity to come clean. You chose lies. Now you'll have to deal with what comes next." "Those pictures of you and Daniel, If they were to go public, what do you think would happen to your reputation? How much support would your charity efforts really get? Maybe a few people would toss you some sympathy donations, I said, but any serious donor, any executive, would never tie their name to yours. I wouldn't. Not that I could, even if I wanted to, I added. You had me thrown in here. But if someone out there decided you needed to pay for that, I wouldn't be able to stop them. Imagine your mother opening an envelope with those photos, or worse. Imagine them circulating through her church community. All it takes is one person to put the pieces together. You were still married when you cheated. Do you hate me that much? She asked, her voice breaking. You have no idea what I'll do to protect our daughter, I said. It's clear we've both drawn our lines, and now you'll be left to clean up the mess when your beloved Daniel's world collapses. What are you planning, Matthew? She asked, fear creeping in. What could I possibly plan from here? I said, voice flat. I'm in a cell, remember? A month passed before Raymond stopped by for his routine check. Matthew, everything you requested is prepped, he said. It's all confirmed and securely backed up. We've actually got 2 strong angles of leverage, if you know what I mean, just waiting for you to greenlight it. I need a major favor today, I told him. Here's exactly what needs to happen. You're serious? He asked, visibly shocked. I am. Do what I said. Then come back Thursday. I'll give you the rest of the plan then. I was out cold Tuesday night. Slept so deep I wouldn't have stirred if a guard hadn't tapped me awake to say I had a visitor. When Daniel stepped into the room, I greeted him with a grin stretched wide across my face. Good morning, Daniel. I'd imagine the weather's nice, though I haven't had the pleasure of seeing it in a while. He wasn't in the mood. Don't start with me, Matthew, he barked. Your guy said this was urgent. I'm here. You've got 5 minutes. Talk. I know Rebecca's been staying with you, I said, straight to the point. His smirk came fast. Living with me? He said, eyes gleaming. She's in my bed every night. He let out a low chuckle. I reminded myself, stick to the plan. I want her out today. And I want it in writing that you'll never go near her again. No phone calls, no visits. Not ever. Are we clear? He laughed, short and sharp. And what reason could I possibly have for agreeing to that? Because if you don't, I said coolly, you're going to see what real destruction looks like. And believe me, you'll regret pushing me. He leaned closer, sneering. You're a joke. I took your woman, and now you're trying to scare me from behind bars? That's pathetic. I'm done here. Then, as he stood, he twisted the knife. Rebecca and I have plans tonight, just so you know. Getting her to sleep with me wasn't hard. 3 drinks, a little extra help. She was mine. And don't bother threatening me with photos. I recorded everything. First night's on DVD. He smirked as he turned to leave. Maybe I'll send you a copy, he said, almost playfully. I watched him walk out, every muscle in my body tense with fury. I wanted nothing more than to break him in 2. But I kept my composure. He'd said enough. As much as it burned, I had to let him go, for now. He didn't realize he'd handed me exactly what I needed. What's the move, boss? Raymond asked as he glanced around the room. Raymond, I replied, voice steady. You know what people do to cockroaches? They crush them. Daniel thought I was bluffing. Time to prove him wrong. Make it happen. Today. I laid out the rest of the plan, not caring in the slightest if the cameras were catching every word. 2 days later, Carter Materials came under fire. Investigators discovered that many of their safety reports had been falsified. Roughly 1/3 of their products had never been tested at all, and most of the ones that were had fake documentation. These inferior materials had been approved for use in schools and hospitals. Then a former employee stepped forward, someone who said the guilt had become unbearable. He couldn't stand knowing that structures meant to shelter the vulnerable were built on deception. A spokesperson for the government later confirmed that all Carter contracts were suspended and the company's assets frozen pending investigation. I'd bet that ex-employee slept well that night, knowing he'd finally done something right. From my cell, I watched it all unfold with grim satisfaction. Carter's stock plummeted. Daniel's face was suddenly everywhere, and before long, prosecutors began circling. On top of that, a DVD surfaced, one showing Daniel boasting to another inmate that he'd drugged a woman's drink to get her into bed. No one had come forward yet, but the authorities had launched a full investigation. About a week later, I was back in front of Judge Martinez. "Mr. Matthew Harper," she announced, "you're being released. Your former spouse has officially withdrawn the charges. I don't know what you've been up to behind the scenes, but let me give you one piece of advice. Don't find yourself back here. Understood?" "Yes, Your Honor," I replied, calm and composed. "Case dismissed," she said as the gavel came down. "Bailiff, bring in the next case." Just like that, it was done. "You're a free man now, Matthew," said Sarah, walking beside me. "Maybe this means you can finally get your life back." I looked straight ahead. "Sarah, after what's happened these past 9 months, there's no such thing as a normal life for me anymore. I just want to make sure everyone involved in this nightmare answers for what they've done." Outside the courthouse, Raymond was already waiting. "How does it feel, being out?" he asked. "Incredible," I said simply. "I tied up all the loose ends," he told me. "Your father lands at 10 tonight. Nobody will notice him at customs. Ella's return has been handled quietly." "That won't be necessary anymore," I said. "The hardest part is over." I paused. "Now take me to the nearest bar." I couldn't wait to get home for a beer. I needed one immediately. The first bar Raymond and I stumbled upon became our refuge. We ordered rounds of Miller Lite and Corona, letting the cold drinks take the edge off. After a bit, we moved on to Longhorn Steakhouse, where I finally had a real meal, the first in almost 6 months. "You're looking solid, man," Raymond said, eyeing me up and down. "No more gut." "You're killing it." "Maybe you should start doing squats. Try 200 plus 100 push-ups twice a day," I shot back. "Fast food probably isn't helping you, huh?" We cracked up as I polished off the last piece of steak. "Rebecca's been at the house for the past couple weeks," Raymond said, shifting gears. When I told her about Daniel, she was completely floored. "She was in shock," I said. "I had someone stay with her at first just so she wouldn't be alone. Even now she's still rattled, keeps asking if you'll talk to her." I told him I would, tonight. That's when it hit me. I hadn't told him Ella and Dad were coming over too. Rebecca and Ella had been on my mind constantly these past few months. I always knew the moment would come when I'd have to face it all. That moment had arrived. My daughter was finally coming home. The second Ella saw me, she sprinted into my arms, holding on so tight I thought my spine might crack. "I missed you, Daddy," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Do I have to leave again?" "Not this time, sweetheart. You're home for good." Then Dad walked up, Gloria beside him, his new girlfriend. He shook my hand and gave me a hug. "You look good." "Leaner," he said, smirking. "Maybe doing time wasn't the worst thing for you. Richard, meet Gloria." Gloria reached out politely, and I shook her hand, saying it was nice to finally meet. But we couldn't linger. We had to get home. During the drive, Dad gave me the rundown. He'd been bouncing from place to place, staying quiet, out of sight. "When this is all behind us," he said, glancing warmly at Gloria, "I want to go back to those places. Do it right this time, with her." He was in love. Raymond dropped us all off at my place. I told Ella her mom was inside waiting. She ran straight through the door. I followed behind slowly with Dad and Gloria. As soon as we entered, I saw Rebecca and Ella clinging to each other, crying. Rebecca looked over at me, her eyes wet. "Thank you," she whispered. I nodded and made my way upstairs. For the next few hours, we caught up. Everyone had something to share, but eventually, fatigue crept in. Their words slowed, their eyes faded. It was time to call it a night. Ella had her own room. So did Rebecca. I went back to mine. Dad hugged me goodbye, said he'd be back with Gloria in a few days. As I walked past her door, Rebecca called out, "Matthew, we need to talk." "There'll be time," I said, brushing it aside. I stood under a hot shower, finally in my own bathroom again. Then I collapsed into the bed, so soft, I barely believed it was real. But sleep didn't come easy. I'd grown used to the constant noise in prison. The stillness here was unsettling. Whoever stocked the fridge, I owed them. By 7 a.m., I was sitting down to a real breakfast. Rebecca came down soon after, wrapped in the old white robe I gave her years ago. "Coffee?" she asked. "Made a full pot," I replied, handing her a mug. "Sit down." She took a sip before speaking. "Raymond called me the day before you met Daniel, told me everything, warned me not to go back to the house for my stuff. He kept me informed, but Daniel, he was worse than I ever imagined." "Rebecca, we don't have to do this now." I started, but she didn't let me finish. "No, Matthew. If we had just talked months ago, maybe none of this would have happened, but we didn't. So now here we are. I'm not going to apologize, not because I don't want to, but because it wouldn't be enough. I made horrible decisions. Please, don't take my daughter away again." She began to sob. The rage I'd carried for so long had finally burned out, but the love was gone too. She wasn't my wife anymore. "You're welcome to stay here," I told her. "I'm not kicking you out. Raymond will grab your things from Daniel's tomorrow. But you've got more important things to worry about now." I gave a bitter smile. "You and I are done. We're not a couple. You chose him, over Ella's safety. That's something I'll never get past." Her shoulders shook with deeper cries. "For Ella's sake," I continued, "you can stay. This house is open to you. You'll have your room, and I'll have mine. What she needs now is consistency. Two parents, on the same page, not tearing her apart. If you're willing to do that, we can make this work. For her. The one and only rule is this. No men, no boyfriends, no male visitors are allowed in this house. Got it?" She gave the slightest nod in response, but the spark in her eyes had faded. What remained was a hollow version of the woman she used to be, stripped of her fantasies, now left to face the harsh consequences of her decisions. It's been several months since Ella re-entered our world. Life, though still imperfect, has gradually returned to something that resembles the calm we once knew. Dad and Gloria got married in a small, private ceremony with just the immediate family. They're off now, wandering through ancient ruins and lounging on sunlit Mexican beaches. When I asked for details about their trip, he just smiled knowingly. I reminded him to give me a ring if he ran out of money. On my end, business has taken a sharp turn for the better. After the press finally cleared my name, the same corporations that once ignored my calls were suddenly eager to work with me again. I let go of the past and moved forward. I didn't dramatically raise my rates, though I might have nudged them up a bit. Daniel, on the other hand, has bottomed out. With multiple charges pending, he's likely facing 20 years or more behind bars. Surprisingly, Claire, his ex-wife, reached out to me recently. She said she always suspected the truth about him, and she wondered if we could all find a way to start fresh. We've shared a few lunches since then, and she's honestly a remarkable woman, someone I'd like to get to know better given time. Rebecca still lives here. She hasn't dated anyone since, and she's working part-time at an engineering firm while Ella attends school. I pay her just like I would any other employee, but I also contribute generously to a retirement fund in her name each month. Are Rebecca and I back together? Not even close. My faith in her is gone, and I don't know if it'll ever come back. Still, with Ella under this roof for a few more years, I'm not going to throw her mother out. Not unless someone new comes into my life, someone I can actually trust. A woman with depth, integrity, and warmth. If I've learned anything from these past few years, it's this. You can never afford to let your guard down, not in your work, and definitely not in your heart. I've made a habit of triple-checking things now, not just in the shop, but in life. Ella deserves a father who stands between her and the chaos, a man who builds walls to protect what's sacred. And if I ever choose to build something new, to try again with someone else, I'll make damn sure the foundation is solid, the kind that doesn't crack under pressure. Something built to last. Our story has come to an end. What do you think about this story? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed the way I tell stories, head over to my channel and check out my other videos. May the force be with you. See you soon, my friend.